Tulane is headed to Oxford, Mississippi for the first round of the college football playoffs. Ole Miss is absent. Lane Kiffin. Enter Pete Golding. And look, Tulane, impressive win against North Texas. And I'll say this, maybe not an impressive looking team like on paper, but you have some interesting wins on there, like against power conference opponents. However, this is a rematch of a game earlier this season, which is a surprising rematch. Who would have thought that these two teams would rematch in the college football playoffs? 17.5-point spread, CD, is what we're dealing with here. What do we like about this game? What do we like about Ole Miss here? What are some of the nuances to this game, and what do we need to look out for?
Yeah, I think the dynamics of this game in terms of like outside factors, it kind of leans towards Ole Miss. I know that sounds a little bit backwards because of all the coaching changes, the chaos that have happened there, but I feel like we're going to get a team here that's pretty united, pretty bought in, and pretty pissed off. And if you are Tulane, those are not the adjectives you want to be describing a team that is already more talented than you, already more physical, and has already dominated you. I don't think they're looking ahead here. I think this is also, and I know it's Tulane and you're 17.5-point favorites, but this is the biggest game in the history of the Grove, right? At Oxford or in Mississippi. Like, this is a massive spot for the fans, for the program. You have a chance to win a playoff game, which is something that, you were hoping Lane Kiffin would do for you. And ironically, he's not going to be the one to actually get the win notched in his name, which is awesome for Pete Golding and Ole Miss as a little, spite to Kiffin there. But yeah, I have a hard time convincing myself that we are going to see a much different result than we saw back in September, was it, right? Early in the year, with Tulane and Ole Miss. And that was also at Ole Miss. Yes, Jake Retzlaff was still new to the system. Yes, he was still breaking in some kinks and all that stuff, but they struggled to run the ball outside of him, to be honest. He struggled to throw the ball with any kind of consistency. It was about under 30% passing percentage. They didn't have any explosive plays. Like, it was pretty rough, right? And they did not get off to a good start, which cannot happen in this game either. Way too many punts. I wonder how many bullets are in the chamber for this Tulane team. We've seen them go on a really, really nice run down the stretch. Obviously, you had some luck with some of the things that happened within your conference in terms of some teams losing games, but here we are with Tulane, and they deserve to be in the spot, by winning the American and obviously playing a tough schedule and all that kind of good stuff. And credit to them for scheduling a pretty hard out of conference schedule. You had 3 Power 4 teams. You had, by the way, one of them was a conference winner and Duke, right? I don't know, it's the ACC is Duke and yeah, but that's still impressive in a game you won. South Alabama too. They're probably one of the better 4-win teams in the country as well, especially in the G5. That's where we're at.
With nice, this Tulane team. Nice.
Yeah.
I'll be on Ole Miss minus 17.5 right here. I think what you talked about, the bump that these kids are going to get in energy, wanting to prove themselves, the biggest game in this school's history. There's just a lot of factors here. And not to mention, Trinidad Chambliss, in his second start ever, absolutely shredded this Tulane defense. Early in the season, I get it. Early in the season, Tulane shredded this defense. Now, the speculation, is he going to sit out? Is he going to opt out? I don't know. Austin Simmons or Trinidad Chambliss, I think Ole Miss is blowing Tulane out. I'm not confident enough in that to put that on my best bets for this week. So we'll not be betting that game. We'll not be giving out that pick on the show. I think that there's some other interesting angles you can look at for this game, but I like Jake Retzlaff as a quarterback. I like some of the weapons that they have, but I think it's a little too Jake Retzlaff dependent, this offense is. And when that happens and you're playing against teams that are significantly more talented than you, I think you can run into some issues because Jake Retzlaff, while a great quarterback, if you rely on him too much, just know that he's not even the best quarterback in this game. So I think that there's some issues there.
Yeah, he's probably the third best quarterback in this game, unfortunately.
Probably.
Yeah, and for Ole Miss too, I think if you're looking for some hope for Tulane, right, it is, you struggled offensively in that first game. Ole Miss their statistical profile and even their metrics against opponent adjusted, they're still in the 50s, right? In terms of defensive metrics, like you're going to have to score if you're Tulane to stay in this ball game. And that's where you could see, if you don't, especially early in the game, you could see a potential blowout and this thing could get out of hand and you start pressing and yada, yada, yada. But if you are Tulane and you do think you can score on this Ole Miss team, that would be your one hope. The one thing I will push back on that is I think they might be a little bit better defensively than they get credit for, Ole Miss. Down the stretch, I know you've seen some tough spots here in terms of what you've given up to teams. Georgia put a fat number on you. Oklahoma scored more points against you than they have against anyone else in the SEC, essentially. Florida put a little bit of points up on you. But other than that, like I still think you watching those games, I think there's talent on this team defensively. Obviously, Pete Golding gets a big bump there. I like Ole Miss in the spot here, minus 17.5. I also like, as a best bet, the under on the Tulane team total, 19.5. This feels like a statement spot for Ole Miss where you don't see them letting up the gas like you might see potentially in that night window with Oregon and James Madison, especially if it does get out of hand. I worry about turnovers from Retzlaff. I worry about running the football. I worry about using his right arm, to be your best source of offense. And that is not a good spot to be if you are Tulane on the road against a pretty darn good Ole Miss team.
I hear your observation about Ole Miss's defense, and I think they may be better than what people believe that they are. However, we have seen Tulane walk into opponents and just maul them, on the lines of scrimmage. And I'm not saying that they're going to maul Ole Miss on the offensive line of scrimmage, but I think that there could be a little bit of a slap in the face here in the first quarter. I mean, you get a couple weeks off. If Tulane, interestingly enough, if they get out to a hot start, I think there's a chance they could win this game or at least make it close. That's not my opinion on that's not how my opinion of this game actually squares out to be. But I do think Tulane, they have a unique ability to run the football. They've got several running backs that are averaging over 4.5 yards a carry. Jake Retzlaff, I believe, is the leading rusher. But I mean, you can get creative in the run game, and if you get physical there, and you kind of punch them in the mouth, you can make things pretty interesting early in this game. I just imagine Ole Miss at some point just kind of pulling away and kind of just pulling away. So that's where I think your team total under would kind of collapse, is if you can see some early scores from Tulane, like the punch in the mouth, running the football. I mean, Tulane's going to have to. I mean, they're going to have to run the football. But again, we talk about John Sumrall, balancing two jobs right now. I mean, that's something. You look at this game and you're like, okay, John Sumrall and Pete Golding. I'm obviously going to give the coaching edge to John Sumrall, but it's different. Pete Golding is 100% in right there. John Sumrall is having to recruit players to Florida and, get on planes and visit guys and, answer to boosters and all this stuff. He's having to do stuff for Florida because that is an important job. It's great that I think Florida is letting him coach the college football playoffs. I think that's awesome because, the players didn't do anything. The players in Tulane didn't deserve to not have their head coach for this, right? They've worked hard. John Sumrall made a promise to those kids and the parents, right? They're just going to take care of them, and up and leaving is pretty tough on those kids. After all, they are just kids. But I think the coaching advantage, I don't think Tulane has a significant coaching advantage in this one if John Sumrall is halfway out the door.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I trying to go back and forth. The Ole Miss got their offensive staff also on the 1 foot in, 1 foot out as well. I will say I do think being coordinators, position coaches, yes, you are recruiting for sure, but I think they're probably having an easier time managed than Summerall, who's trying to assemble a staff, trying to recruit, trying to meet with boots. You talked about all those things. The head coach schedule is hard enough in 24 hours when you're doing it for two teams. Boy, oh boy, is that going to be tough. And Tulane, obviously, they're promoting Will Hall, which we'll talk about in more depth. And I guess my instant reaction to that was disappointment. And I would love to hear from Tulane fans as well. We will get to that, in the offseason, and we'll preview some of the coaches or all the coaching changes to come on the coaching carousel. But that's interesting there. I want to ask you, in terms of the style that you think Ole Miss comes out and plays, like, yes, this is Lane Kiffin's offense. This is Charlie Weiss. This is the same thing that they're probably going to be running. But if you are Ole Miss, do you plan on slowing the game down in terms of just trying to milk the clock, get out of here with a win? Or do you expect to see them go, go, go from the jump and just never look back? Or that make sense?
I think they will go, go, go.
Yeah.
I think they will go, go, go. I don't think they want to leave anything to chance. I mean, these coaches, it's more about these players. Like, they're going to absolutely be pumping it out. And I think like their intensity and their energy, I think whether or not they run super high tempo, that's going to be up to the coaching staff, I guess. But I'm sure Chambliss is going to be one of this offense to, keep running that breakneck speed and keep Tulane on their heels and keep them tired. Like then the third quarter, fourth quarter runs out. Kawan Lacey against a tired Tulane defense is going to be running wild. So I would imagine that the game plan does not change, or the intensity and the fast pacedness and the explosiveness. I don't think that's going to change with Lane Kiffin gone.
No, and also too, if you are Ole Miss, just like logically thinking through this analytically, the more possessions you have in this game as the better team, the better chance you give yourself to win in terms of just decreasing the amount of variance that can happen.
Yep, exactly.
Volatility between the outcomes. So that's also interesting things. All things that are probably, a little bit scary with the under team total if you are having a ton of possessions. Regardless, so I still feel pretty good about it. Under 19.5, Ole Miss minus 17.5. You and I both on.